Good to get a win last week at a place that I was at for a long time. Still a lot of faces there that I know. I had a chance to talk to. Listen, that first half, man, it was the way that we played defense. Right, second half, we had some events that happened that we got to get better at, which we will get better at. And our guys will continue to practice hard and work on those things. So, again, I like where we're at as far as the record overall team. Obviously, there's some things we want to clean up on defense, and we will continue to do those.
I was asking Dan about this earlier in the week. The third quarter for both the offense and defense, it doesn't stack up with how you guys perform in the other three quarters. What is your perspective in terms of maybe needing to not stick to the original plan or make more adjustments or anticipate adjustments? What do you think maybe is the key to unlocking a little bit better start to the second halves?
I think that's really funny that's always the buzzword of adjustments. And I kind of laugh at it because it just shows that how people just don't have a clue. I mean, we're winning and we're doing a really good job. And what are you changing?
I think it's a counter to, they're probably adjusting, right? And
you have to see if they're going to adjust.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they make plays, and we didn't make plays we should have made. When you have key plays in a game that's caused some issues, to me, that's where you try to make sure you make those adjustments. And sometimes you make them on the sideline, sometimes you make them at halftime. But in a game, man, there's always adjustments that's being made. Because every team is not just going to come out and do the things that they've shown on tape. They're always going to have something new. So our job as coaches to make sure that whatever those new things they come out with, man, we adjust to make sure we put our guys in position to make those plays. And it happens all the time. So we'll continue to do that. But that's a thing that's an emphasis that we've been offensively and defensively we've been going over for a while. Even in the off season, we talk about those things, and man, we have to get better at that if we want to be the team we want to be. So you're right in that aspect of making sure that, man, we just come out the same way we come out in the first half with energy, effort, and doing those things. I think it's more of that than anything else.
How do you limit some of the big plays? It seems like maybe that's been a tick up since the bye. Maybe some of those kind of big plays, maybe especially on some third down situations. Just how frustrating has that been a little bit, and how do you limit some of those big plays over the last month?
Well, big plays are always frustrating. But the thing that I try to do is look at the big picture. We're one of the top teams in the league as far as not giving up explosive plays. So I always try to point back to that. What did we do before to not give those things up? And our guys understand that. And listen, this is a league of teams are trying to make big plays, because usually when you make big plays, obviously you're going to get scores after that. So that's one thing that we try to make sure we focus on. And we look at the things that we've done before to make sure we limit those, and we want to continue to try to do those things.
You guys have, I'm sure the points that you've allowed since the bye isn't quite up to your standard, but you guys are 3-1 and 9 wins overall. So what is the urgency to get that fixed for down the stretch?
Listen, there's always an urgency in that regard. That's the first thing that we talk about as a defense. We want to limit points. I think when you look at it in totality, you look at our overall defense, man, there's really the same core that's been here. And you look at us last year at this time, man, we were not a good defense. I think we were ranked last in a lot of different categories. And you look at it now with really the same core, I mean, these guys have improved. And that's the one thing I don't think people really take a look at is, man, Max having his best year, I will think. I do think Hutch is having a good year. The thing is, there's been so much attention to him that he hasn't had a chance to get the sacks that he's wanted to give. Those things will come for him. You look at Alex, I think Alex is having the best year of his career. So this time last year, when it comes to yards, when it comes to rush, when it comes to, man, we were not good last year. But this year, man, things have changed. So I think we got to give credit to those guys. And we don't hear that enough. Listen, everybody wants to be the number one defense. Hell, I want to be the number one defense. But guys have to develop, and the guys have developed. And look where they put themselves. And they're going to continue to get better at that. Even the guys that's like Broderick that we're developing now, I mean, those guys are going to come along and do well for us.
How do you coach Aiden Hutchinson in this time, though, to not let him get, discouraged or, get frustrated?
Yeah.
Because you feel like he is playing well. He feel like he's playing well, but not getting necessarily stacks. How do you deal with him and keep him focused and motivated?
Well, the first thing you talk to him about is how he's affecting the game, but the numbers might not be saying it. And he's really doing that. The second thing is Man, understand how do the top guys in this league, and I'm not talking about the guys that's playing now, but even the guys that played like way before him, how do they handle the double teams? I think the one thing that he had a chance to look at, he looked at T.J. Watt, who's an explosive player, and man, he's always using his hands. And I think if you see the game against New Orleans, man, he did a really good job of using his hands. And guys, man, hell, he had 3 guys on him at one point. He still got a chance to get a hit on the quarterback. So he's still developing in that regard. And that just goes to show just how much more of his game he has left. And again, like I'm happy where that player is at. I mean, obviously he wants to get more sacks. We want him to get more sacks. But man, understand exactly how you, what you're doing is really affecting a lot of the things on defense.
The first guy you mentioned in that group of guys that were improving was McNeil. We all see it. You know, he's giving you something in the center that this franchise has lacked for a while. You're without him for the next 4 games, and we all understand next man up mentality. But what is the task of replacing the type of production he's been giving?
It's always hard to replace a player of his stature, and we all know that. The thing that we got to do a really good job of, man, is keep developing the guys that we have in our program. And the other guys have to step up too. I mean, Pascal has to do a really good job. Sometimes he's going to be inside, and we're going to need him to step up. Broderick has to continue to develop. Bugs has to continue to develop. Just a lot of these guys that we have in our program has got to take up that slack. And you're right. I mean, it is next man up mentality. You know, no one's going to feel sorry for us. We're not going to feel sorry for ourselves, and we're going to continue to try to be the best defense we can each week.
So you mentioned you got a bunch of young, guys that are sort of waiting to maybe for this opportunity, specifically with Broderick. What growth have you seen from him over the past couple of months, and what can he provide?
Man, just coming from where he did in college and understanding exactly how he has to play in this league. The one thing I think that he had an issue with earlier is just being able to use his hands and understand how to use his hands. And man, I tell you, in practice, he's doing a really good job of that. I mean, before practice, after practice, those are the things that Broderick is doing a really good job of to get himself on the field. And then other than that, man, I'm a big believer in D linemen being able to have lateral agility. And he's working his butt off, trying to work on those things too.
Collectively, is that group, because there's relatively high draft picks, day 2 picks, Levi, him, Aleem's been that. But and Josh, have those guys progressed like you guys had hoped at this point? What's kept them from having bigger production?
Well, I mean, it's hard for Levi, because he hasn't had a chance to really just play for us. And listen, that injury was a significant injury, so it's going to take him time. I mean, obviously, Mac, I think he's having his best season. And Josh is the same thing. I mean, he hasn't had enough plays to really just, man, where is he at? So, but the thing is, you're starting to see that with Josh. I talked about that last week with him. I mean, in the New Orleans game, he had some really good plays. So the development is coming with that player.
Do you think some recent veterans to the defense? I mean, Bruce and then Tyson. I mean, what does that do for a young team like this, kind of trying to hit that next level, heading into this meaty football?
Well, 2 36-year-olds. That's awesome, though, man. Golly. To be playing at that age, especially, 2 guys that's been in the fight like they've been in when you're playing at that D-line position. But both of those guys can give just insight on what it takes to play at a high level. I mean, I've known Tyson for a while as far as who he was as a player. That's a pick come from Cal. So he has some pelts on the wall, and he can help our young guys as far as things that they need to do to be at that level. Same thing with Bruce. Bruce talked to some of the guys this week while playing at a championship level. So, man, it's good to just hear those guys' voice, for them to bring what they understand this league's about. But, man, I think it's outstanding for guys 36 years old still playing this league, man.
To go back to Levi for a second, you mentioned he hasn't had the healthy reps on the field. Do you feel like this is an opportunity for that, considering there's, at least in terms of pass rush, a little bit of overlap with his skill set with
Listen, any time he gets game reps, it's always good for him. The thing is, we can't play everybody. There's only so many people we can bring on defense, and if we could bring them all, I would. But we can't. The thing is, the guys that we've had been playing pretty good. Again, we're a top run defense in this league, so we don't want to just bring guys just to be bringing them. I mean, guys have to earn their keep, and I've said that several times. And when you have an injury, man, guys really have to step up and be a big part of what we're doing. And this is going to be a week where he has to do that.
One of the guys that hasn't been mentioned in that defensive tackle mix is Bohanna.
Yeah.
You've elevated him 3 straight weeks and given him a role, and we've seen him flash. I don't know where he's at with the consistency perspective. I think he might be out of elevations. But you know, what have you thought about what he's given you this month?
Listen, that's a big man. That's a huge man. And the thing that he shows that is pretty impressive is he has some first step quickness to him. Listen, he's still a young player too. I mean, I remember him, and I know you guys do, when he was in Dallas, and he's played a good amount of plays there. So he understands this game, but he's still a young player, and he still needs to develop. So we have to be very careful on how we use these elevations to make sure that we can get the best guy for us. But we will do that. But like, I'm impressed with that player. I'm impressed with him, and he's doing a good job for us.
You even marvel sometimes at just what Sam's been able to do as a rookie. I mean, you look so many times in this league at just how hard it is for guys to come in and be consistently productive at that position. To see what he's been doing consistently, yeah, ever let yourself step back a little bit and go, wow, we've got somebody pretty special here.
I haven't had a chance to watch it all in totality, I guess, but we keep, I think I've said it a few times now, we keep trying to find out things that he can't do, and we're still scratching our heads there. So we like to line him up all over the place. He's doing a phenomenal job picking up the details, the nuances of alignment, splits, responsibilities, and that's what's allowing us to push the envelope a little bit. But no, it's really impressive for a rookie. It doesn't matter what position, but particularly that one, even more challenging in a lot of ways between the run game and the pass game.
If you just look at the way that defense is played in this league, there's more zone than man. So obviously, receivers, more production comes against zone versus man. But that was a big man-to-man performance for Laporta. Is that a bigger challenge, I guess, for a young player, a young tight end, to be able to learn how to win those matchups at this level?
I don't think so. You know, what he showed on tape at Iowa was that he was going to be a dynamic route runner in this league. He certainly is a little bit more advanced in the run game than I thought. Those guys at Iowa do a phenomenal job coaching, and so that's why it's tight end U right now. Those guys come out ready to roll. But yeah, he was able to win some man matchups last week, and hopefully that continues for us. That alleviates the burden on our wideout group too. They were double insane at times, and so we need somebody else to step up and win the one-on-ones. His number was called more often than not last week.
I think when you guys played the Bears last time, you just sort of glossed over your defense, and you said it's pretty good defense at the end, and proved to be right. What are they doing so well on defense? What sort of challenges?
They stop the run. They are extremely sound. Their head coach is very detailed. You can tell that he stresses the fundamentals and he stresses play style. They are relentless. They pursue. They're very disciplined. And so when you combine that with a sound scheme, it makes it very difficult to run the ball. He was a good run defense when he was in Indy, and that's really carried over now to Chicago. They've got some good talent all across the ball up front. They've got some guys playing better than maybe what you might not have heard their names before, but these defensive tackles, they are stout at the point of attack. Obviously, they added another pass rusher in Sweat, but he's a good run defender as well. Second level, 49 shows up all over the tape, and in 53, the guy they brought in from Philly is very instinctive. And then on the back end, it's a bunch of young, hungry guys that just love playing football, it looks like. So it's a challenge scheme-wise, and then also with who they have and how they're playing.
Since you mentioned the run first, I mean, the weather, Brunel even said it yesterday, probably going to have to run the ball a lot just based on the conditions. The challenge of that, I guess, too, against that defense with knowing that that's going to be a big part of the game this week.
Yeah, I think the weather's trending our direction a little bit, but I'm with you. It's the way we are built on offense is we can be productive any number of ways, and so we'll do whatever we need to do to put ourselves in a position to win this ball game. Our guys, of course, up front, they take this as a challenge going against such a good group on defense that's been so good against the run all year long, and so. I think they're embracing this challenge with open arms. It'll be a good opportunity. We got a couple really good backs, that help make us right and make guys miss. So it'll be good for us. It'll be good.
You talked about the double teams that Saint see and the coverage, brackets, sometimes with him, and Laporta stepping up was huge last week, but do you expect Saint to have maybe a little bit of extra motivation here? He's been so good over his career of beating those double teams and finding those spots within the brackets. Do you expect there to be a little motivation for him to get more involved this week than what we saw last week?
Yeah, I think he's been targeted quite a bit, almost every game. Even last week, he was primary on quite a few things. We didn't connect on a few that we really want back, I think. But I've got no doubt that he's going to come out and be the same productive player that he's always been. They double him in certain situations, and that's when the other guys have to feast. But when Sam Laporta or I think Khalif Raymond had a big game a couple weeks ago, when these other guys make plays, it makes defenses think twice about trying to take out number 14.
You've got so many weapons, it's probably hard to figure out how to figure which mouth to feed, I guess, that week or that situation. You talk about it with Gibbs and Montgomery finding a way to get both of them involved as much as possible. Gibbs had maybe one of his lower usage rates in a while last week. I'm wondering, when you came out of that game, how did you feel about, I guess, how much you got him the ball, particularly with the explosive run early in the game?
Probably within the moment, don't equate it. At halftime, we get a feel for who's touched the ball how many times. But within the circumstance of the game, it's kind of just an ebb and a flow. And so may or may not try to just dial it up to get it in someone's hands. Other times it might be, hey, I think they're going to be in this defense and we want to attack them this way. So it's a balancing act right now. And it's a blessing and a curse to have this many talented skill players. I mean, we got a phenomenal tight end, we got 2 really good running backs, and we got all 5 receivers that are up on game day really deserve to get the ball in their hands and get a chance to run with it. So that's where each week it's somebody, you're all going to have plays in, and someone's probably going to be at the end of the game not as happy that not touching the ball enough, and we just try to cycle it around each week. Who's got that? But we've got a lot of dynamic playmakers, and that's the challenge for us right now.
How much is that part of your process? I mean, like you said, you look at it at the halftime, you're going with the other. How much is that your Sunday night, Monday morning process of just, I guess, studying your own usage and tendencies of guys and trying to maintain that weekly balance?
Yeah, we're very aware of who gets the ball, where they line up, the self-scout tendencies, in which situations. We know what those things are, and we try to usually use that against the defense.
How's Colby developed over the last few weeks?
Say it again.
Colby, just what you've seen in his maybe development over the last couple weeks.
It's really night and day. I think the first game he was in was maybe Atlanta, that he had to get thrown in there, if I remember correctly, and he really got thrown in at right tackle, and it wasn't his prettiest tape, and I think he would admit as much. But to see where he's grown from those early reps and playing in interior, both right side and left side, he continues to get better each week. Is it perfect? No, but for a rookie, this is learning on the fly a little bit, and he, as long as as well as all of our other guys, young guys, they just continue to get better with reps, and that's what he needs.
I was going to ask you about him too. If he has to play this week, with Frank's status, is he more comfortable on the right side just because he's played that a lot more, right tackle, obviously in college, than you pulled him in the game a couple weeks ago when he was playing left?
We've been cross-training him all training camp and so far this season. I think if you probably looked at it, maybe he's lined up on the right side a little bit more than the left side over the course of that time, but he's getting a lot more comfortable on playing interior football. It really doesn't matter which side he's on.
Hey Ben, how much do you look at the weather before a game, and how much does that impact what you want to try to do, and when does, I guess probably win more than anything else, become a factor in the passing game?
Yeah, that's a great question. It certainly plays a big role. It plays a big role in Coach Campbell's decisions of, hey, do we want to kick? Do we want to receive? Do we want to play with the wind? Do we not want to play? All those things. But for me as a play caller, certainly we look at wind, we look at precipitation, temperature, all that. Another variable that goes into the play calls is what's the sun's location. I've been a part of a number of times we've thrown deep balls and it gets caught and it's all for naught. It's a perfect ball and the guy's wide open, and it. So all those factors week in and week out always go into our thought process and how we want to call the game. sometimes maybe you got the wind behind your back one quarter and you know you're not going to the next quarter, so you want to maybe be a little more aggressive and vice versa, things of that nature.
You mentioned the weather trending your way. When do you start looking at it? Or when does it maybe impact the game plan? Like, if you just start doing something Tuesday, then by Thursday it changes. Is there a
Yeah. I mean, it's the game plan's always in flux, and so we never really put our finishing touches on it until really we never do. I mean, there's adjustments being made all the time in the game. In fact, I mean, we put in a play right before, about an hour before kickoff, that we ended up calling there in the last drive before halftime last week. But that's just an example. We're always tweaking things, and our players, they don't blink an eye. I mean, they're used to it at this point. We put a lot on them in training camp, and so it's just par for the course.
Can you tell us about that play you put in an hour before I mean, just something pop into your head, or is it something you work on?
No, just as you're going through the plan, you're like, hey, maybe we're a little bit light in this area. I think they'll give us this coverage, and just want one more bullet in the chamber just in case the situation popped up,
Did it hit last week?
It should have hit.
I'm curious. Coach Burnell yesterday just said, coming off a bye, like there's this element of the unknown. You kind of got to expect things to get thrown at you haven't seen before. You're not anticipating. How do you prepare for the unknown? What is the process there?
I think when you look at a coach's history, you look at they have an identity in who they are, and you can trust those things. Listen, there's wrinkles every game that we have to deal with. Jared has seen enough football in his 8 years now that he knows, okay, I haven't seen this one before. They haven't shown this before, and he knows how to react if they give us a different pressure or different coverage than what we've seen. So that's the luxury I have, is I've got a veteran quarterback and really veteran offensive line that it doesn't matter what gets thrown at us. We can adjust and still be productive.
Yeah, I could dunk. Oh, yeah. Yeah. All those stereotypes don't exist. No, that was the one thing, yeah. So I was a pole vaulter. I had a good vertical jump. It's like the one thing I could do. No, too old. Getting older.
This thing we share. I was a pole vaulter.
You were?
Yeah.
Yeah, buddy. Nice. That's awesome.
Jalen Reed Maven, Special Teams Player of the Week. Just felt like a remarkable performance as we were watching it. Like, what has he meant to your unit? How much were you pushing to get him back in free agency? I don't know how much you do that with Brad.
Yeah, I mean, when he left, we thought he was a great player and disappointed to, see him go or whatever. But that's a part of the business. And then, obviously, when we had a chance to get him back, it was incredible. He's a great leader. His way of leading is a lot more by example than being vocal. However, he has been vocal, and that's also helped the guys. And he's done a little bit more of that this year. He's obviously a captain for us. But great player. I mean, for him to go out and make the plays that he made in that game was obviously special. And the one thing that I just talked to Dan about it, but the one thing that happens to these guys, when you're a good player, you get a lot of attention. They put good players on you. Sometimes they put two guys on you. If they don't put two guys on you, they put their best guy on you. And so for him to go out and do that against a good football team that has a bunch of good players on their side of the ball and a good, well-coached group who has a good plan, it obviously says a lot about him individually.
When you throw in what he was doing on defense, I mean, just how difficult is that with the workload that he has?
Yeah, it's great, and I think it's just a great example of a guy who I think sometimes there's like a human element to the whole game, and how much you're playing on defense, and everybody wants to be a defensive player or an offensive player. I mean, when you're a kid, you kind of dream of doing that, I think, for most of these guys. And obviously special teams fits somewhere in there. And I think sometimes when guys, start playing more defense, they feel like, well, I'm playing more defense. I kind of got a built-in excuse of, well, I might not have been as good on special teams. And he obviously took the opposite approach, which I think the great players do. I always say competitors compete, and it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're playing a game of whatever, pig or horse or whatever, these guys, they're going to go after it. If there's a free shirt on the line, these guys will compete for it. Doesn't matter how much money you make, and the best players compete the most, and it doesn't really matter what you're doing. And so for him to do that was awesome. It reminds me really, I was watching some, football. We were actually on the plane on our way back, and the 49ers were playing against the Eagles. And, I mean, they got Deebo Samuels back there returning kickoffs for these guys. You know what I mean? And it's like the guy just went off in the game on offense, but he's still playing on kickoff return. And I know that guy must have gone to those guys and said, hey, put me back there. I want to be back there. I can make a difference. It didn't come from a coach saying, hey, will you please? So anyway, for Germ, I mean, competitors compete. He's a competitor. He did a great job. It really speaks volumes, and also such a great example for playing on defense or playing on offense and playing on special teams.
Who's the most insatiable competitor you've been around? Who has that like Michael Jordan to him that you've ever?
Yeah, I'll stay away from answering in specifics, but I would say that I have been fortunate in my time doing this to see a bunch of really good ones. Darren Sproles is a guy who comes to mind. Like, that guy wanted to change the game. You could tell he was going to go change the game. He was going to put it on himself. It didn't matter what anybody else did, how they blocked, how they played. He was going to make the play no matter what. There's two guys running free, I'll make both of them miss. There's one guy running free, great, got that. There's three, no problem. We get great blocking, that's even better. But we need it in the game, and it's at a moment where you need someone to step up big. He did it. He would be one of the better ones, but I have been fortunate to be around a bunch of great ones, and all of them have a different impact. His position's a little bit easier to see the impact of it, whereas a core player, which is also a good thing about Germ, a guy's just running and covering kicks and making tackles, you don't tend to see quite as much. Most of those honors go to like the kicker who makes 4 field goals and a game winner in a game, or the returner who has a big return. But for it to be a core guy who's making tackles doesn't happen very often.
When you face a team for the second time, special teams wise, is there a lot of different stuff? Is there some unique stuff that teams throw at you, or when it comes to special teams, is it how you do what you do with your core, and that's what you see?
Yeah, it is a really good question, because I think there is a balance between the schematics and going against his team and what you'd like to do, but then most of it really comes back, at least for me, it really comes back to who are your players and what do they do well, what are you going to ask them to do. And so like schematically, you're more built around the players that you have, rather than I think this would be a great idea against these guys because they do X, Y, and Z. It really comes down more with our players against these guys in this game and the players they have in this game. It makes more sense for us to do this, even though it would be fun to do that, but it's probably not suited for our guys and putting them in the best spot. So I think a lot of it comes down to individual matchups and players. But then, the other element, which I'm sure you guys are going to ask me about, but the other element, like going into this game, it's a big difference when you're playing them indoors a couple of weeks ago, and then now we're going to their place and we're getting into December and we're playing outside, and there'll be a little bit more wind and weather, and that factors into the game also. And I think I've said before, that's some good and some bad. If the wind's blowing sideways one direction, you generally know which way they're going to kick the ball, but it's still blowing sideways one direction. So.
Is it the elements that make Soldier Field a tough place to kick? Is that field conditions, or what is it that makes that place?
Yeah, I guess in the past you heard a lot about the field. I don't know. When I first got into the league, the grass was longer there, and that was definitely noticeable. And I think, you heard a lot of chatter from players about that, or kickers maybe. That really hasn't been like that for a long time for me. So the field's fine. But yeah, there's definitely always wind and weather there. And, the way the stadium's shaped, it lets some wind and weather in there. So yeah, I would say in general, it's a little bit tougher place to kick. Certainly tougher than indoors at Ford Field.
Between having the offense you guys have and the aggressiveness you have on 4th down, and even mixing in a fake there once in a while, there's sometimes lulls where Jack doesn't get to punt a whole lot. I think you went a month without punting more than twice in a game, so not that you want it, but 5 punts in this game, it seemed like he really thrived having the ability to maybe get into a rhythm.
Yeah, and I would say very well said by you, because what has happened, and it's not only that we've only had like 2 punts in the game, but those 2 punts, like sometimes they're both in midfield. They're totally different plays than when you're punting backed up. In this last game, all those punts really happened down on our end of the field, which hasn't been standard for us. So there definitely has been some lulls, and this was the first time we really got to go out there and cover a bunch of balls and do all that. So, yeah, I totally agree. But, yeah, good to see Fox and have a chance to let it rip and do what he does best.
Feel like maybe one of his better performances as well?
Yeah, I thought he was outstanding in the game. Great hang time, great distance on the balls, good operation time. So I thought he played really well. He's playing really good football right now for us. He's in a really good spot. You can see he's very confident the way he's striking the ball too, and so it's positive.
How did Trevor do, and what's it like as a coach to see him kind of complete that journey from long shot, making the team, and getting out there and playing?
Nowaski. I go by last names on all these guys. Half the time I don't even know. You know I'm not very good with first names. Not to bring up a sore subject, but he was great. And the thing about him, I love talking about him because I feel like he's been a great football player since training camp and just done a great job. So really with him, we didn't miss a beat at all. But yeah, I was excited to see him be able to get out there, because a guy like him, he's doing all this work in practice. He's giving the looks to the other team every single week. And, all he wants is a chance to play, and finally got a chance to play. I thought did a nice job for us.
Is that where he caught your eye as a team in training camp?
Yeah, definitely. In training camp right away, you could say, hey, man, this guy's got something to him. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, he can really run. But on top of that, he's got some awareness for where the football is when he's out there in coverage, and he does a good job in the return game, too, for a defensive player.
So we're talking windmill dunks, or what kind of dunks did you do?
No, it was more just like get it up and over the rim and slam it down. But I didn't get into the windmill or anything like that. But I did dunk.